So I grew up in Arcadia, California, the best place to raise your kids according to yahoo.com. And my parents, being Chinese and Taiwanese, forced me to go to Chinese school for about 9 years as I was growing up. And I remember hating waking up and going to Chinese school, learning Chinese, coming back home, doing exercises, and then going to bed, repeating the process over and over. So I did that for about 9 years. And interestingly enough, even after those 9 years, I could barely read, I could barely write. Basically, my Chinese was far from being fluent. For the longest time in high school, I thought I would never learn Chinese. And that's just because I grew up in the United States. I didn't really have a need for it on an everyday basis. And so when I look back, it's very interesting to see that, one, I took a journey of learning Chinese, and then now today I'm starting a company that is teaching Chinese. So how did this happen? Well, like all great stories, it started because of a girl. And this was in high school. I remember it was my senior year in high school, and I met this girl named Vanessa. And she was from China, and I took a liking to her. So we started going out, and I started talking to her, and our conversations would be in Chinese. And despite my limited Chinese ability, she insisted that we should speak in Chinese and get to know each other that way. So, we went through every day. I had dinner with her, and we'd be conversing in Chinese. And slowly, one day I went home during a break, and my parents and my cousin mentioned that, hey, Andy, your Chinese has improved a lot. What have you been doing? And at that point, I really couldn't tell them that I was seeing this girl. But it just shows, through just these simple interactions with her, that my Chinese was improving. So long story short is, at the end of senior year, we broke up. And I remember that exact moment because I wasn't the one who wanted to break up. She was. And I tried to chase her down and do everything, profess my love, everything a teenager would do. And in return, I was yelled at. I was completely insulted by her in Chinese. And having my limited Chinese abilities, I stood there taking every single insult in and not being able to say anything because this was all done in Chinese. So Vanessa happened, and that was actually the catalyst that got me thinking of, hey, why is Chinese important to my life? So I got to thinking of, when I was about to graduate high school, a lot of questions like, I don't really understand my cultural background, I can't really communicate with my parents, and all of these things just started coming in, and it made me realize that, at least for myself, it was really important to learn Chinese. And so I started this journey. I said, listen, that day I graduated from high school, I said, I want to be fluent in Chinese. And that's how the journey began. So last time I talked about comprehensible input, and we stated that the key to learning languages is taking an input that you understand and lots of input. So this method applied to ABCs works like this. Start with a children's novel with the characters and also the pinyin on the side. And take, for example, the word 打球. The problem right now is we already know what that word means intuitively because we grew up speaking Chinese. We just don't know how the characters look like. So as you go through a book, you might see the character once or twice and you might not recognize it. By the third time, you have a slight impression of those two words. And by the 10th time, I guarantee you link the sound 打球 to the characters 打球. And really, this is the key to becoming fluent in Chinese. So using this approach, I went through 2 or 3 children's novels. And one day, I decided to take off the training wheels, pick up a newspaper. And I was so amazed at myself because while I couldn't read every single character in that newspaper, I was able to understand the gist because 80% of the commonly recurring characters I had learned using my children's novels. I'm going to skip through a lot of the details, but using this basic method, I was able to read a newspaper in 3 months. In 7 months, I was able to deliver a speech in Chinese in front of 200 plus people. And in a year, I was able to go to the largest solar company in the world, Canadian Solar an intern at their Chinese headquarters, writing emails in Chinese, conversing with my coworkers in Chinese, and also ultimately translating their corporate social responsibility report from Chinese to English. Don't get me wrong, in order to apply comprehensible input and this idea of free reading effectively, I had to go through a lot of mistakes and a big learning process. For instance, I had to learn how to pick material that was at the right level, that didn't contain too many words that I had to look up. I had to figure out which words were important to look up and which words weren't important to look up. And so essentially, Alon came out of this idea of, if I could redo the process and get rid of all these inefficiencies and just focus on effective learning, what would I do differently? And so Alon's curriculum is based on leveraging the power of comprehensible input. But we've designed it so that you don't have to do a lot of the grunt work. You don't have to find reading lists. You don't have to figure out what TV shows to use. You don't have to figure out what vocabulary words to look up. We've already packaged all of that preliminary preparation work so that all you have to do is focus on learning. And this is how we maximize improvement. Okay, that's it for today. If anyone has any questions for us about the comprehensible input method or how ABCs should learn effectively, please feel free to reach out to us either on our Facebook page, email, or call. And stay tuned for our next videos.